So after everything that Nintendo has done, it seems pretty likely that they've been listening to us in some proportion. So does this mean that potentially features of the past will be returning once again on Nintendo Switch 2? Now personally, I think that yes, this is going to be happening, and they could easily announce something in one of these upcoming Nintendo Directs. Obviously, it does make sense. For a lot of their games that they have nowadays, you can have something like Miiverse to help everyone implement the feature of helping each other out. After all, Nintendo recently is all about sort of that connection that you feel while playing games. Every single game seems to have some sort of online co-op, even if it is a single player experience. For example, if you look at the recently released Splatoon Raiders, that does have a co-op functionality, which is pretty cool, even though it is intended to be a single player experience. Overall, all these things aside, definitely make for a fantastic addition. We can even go as far as saying Star Fox had some multiplayer functionality which wasn't there in the original. So obviously Nintendo is pushing the multiplayer function, just like they did with the Wii U and maybe even the 3DS. Back then, that was a big topic. Multiplayer was here to give you that vibe of sense of family, friend, pleasure, joy, whatever the case may be. So it honestly makes me believe that Nintendo might be planning to bring back Miiverse. Miiverse was that best functionality. Of course, there wasn't anything like sort of a blur feature that didn't allow people to say whatever the heck they want, but since it's the big year 2026 and AI exists and taking up all the water, don't you think that this would make sense? They can add some sort of feature that blurs out certain words that people could say. So then you can have that global world group chat once again, and you can have the ability to not get cursed at every single 2 seconds. But besides that, all those things aside, would make such a fantastic Switch 2 system, and would probably have the big benefit of saying, hey, this is a system seller feature right there. Miiverse was honestly the best thing, because if you were stuck anywhere, instead of searching it up on the internet, okay, so I'm playing the Legend of Zelda Wind Waker or whatever, how do I go to the Wind Temple? You search that up on Google, you find a video and watch it. You can just say, hey, look at my screenshot, I'm here, what do I do next? Some person is probably going to answer with the specific details on how to get to point A to point B. So obviously that works, and honestly, this is perfect for Nintendo. Since they're already making you pay for game chat, this is probably something else that they can implement. And plus, the C button on the Nintendo Switch 2 Joy-Con has been relatively useless to me, because if you don't really have any friends to play with and use game chat feature, well then you might be able to map that to something else, like chat, and then it opens up Miiverse. Don't you think that this would work in a lot of ways? Because in my opinion, I think this is the perfect example of how Nintendo can implement more and more features from the past and put them into a system of 2026. The Nintendo Switch 2 is definitely more than powerful enough. Before you say that the reason why we didn't get this on the Switch 1 is because it would take up like 3 gigabytes of RAM, you can't have that open, your game would crash. Well, we have the functionality. The Switch 2 is more than powerful enough, more than capable enough to have things running in the background, so obviously this would work. And honestly, I think this would be a best case scenario. Now, what about something like themes or music or whatever the case may be? Themes are definitely a different scenario. After all, we did just get recently this Splatoon 3 sort of theme inside of the application where you can shoot a whole bunch of like splat ink. That was honestly the best thing scenario, because then you could just go in there and start shooting all the ink, and if you don't have Splatoon, actually that thing wouldn't work. But if you don't want to play Splatoon or you don't have Switch Online, that still probably wouldn't work, but whatever. The point is, if you don't have something, you can use that as the little tiny minigame. Remember how great it used to be with tiny minigames that were actually introduced with your system, like Miitopia or Street Pass. That was honestly fantastic, because every time you walked by someone that had the same like console as you, you would get their Mii. And then you can use their Mii to later battle out and have a brawl with the bad guys that you were trying to save like the Princess Mii from. Honestly think the return of this would be great. Now, to this point, I'm not sure if the Nintendo Switch 2 has the functionality or capability of sending and receiving data from a console that's in sleep mode, but let's just assume that it does, because you are able to do like the game sharing, that you're able to stream the game to another system. So obviously this definitely could work in that regard. Same thing goes with the extra functionality that the DS and 3DS had as menu music. All of those systems had different sort of menu music, and it made it great and up to you, and functionality worked the best. Now, of course, if they really wanted to bring something like this, they probably would have done it many moons ago. But let's just go with the idea that they didn't want to because they were trying to roll something out and then completely forgot about it. So now we have the portability and functionality to have all these things together. Don't you think that that would work pretty seamlessly? Honestly, I think it would, but maybe I'm completely delusional. After all, this is Nintendo that we're talking about. They might be winning the console wars, but they might not be given the features. In fact, we can even go as far as saying the PlayStation and the Xbox Series X, since we all know that companies like to piggyback off each other, didn't have themes when they started off. Maybe the Xbox did have, like, you're able to change the wallpaper, but besides that, they didn't have full-fledged themes. But just a year ago or so, we did get a full-fledged theme, so maybe Nintendo's gonna be like seeing that. Okay, so Sony shot themselves in the foot. Xbox is doing whatever the heck they're doing, so now it's our turn to bring something that the player wants. Right now, big physical cartridges are the big talk. Nintendo's the only one with true physical cartridges, which is definitely true. So if you want that and you want to implement the feature side, don't you think that that would work? Overall, this is a little bit of blabbering, but I do think that it would work. Themes, cartridges, features, Miiverse, all of those things would definitely work really well in the big year 2026. And I hope that Nintendo decides to implement something that would allow Nintendo fans to be really happy about the decision and the purchase that they made. But overall, what are your thoughts on all of this? Do you think that themes, Miiverse, whatever else is going to be coming, Street Pass, that would be great. Because honestly, I love Miiverse. I absolutely did. The functionality, the portability, the features, the flexibility that everyone had. You open up Miiverse and you see these awesome images. Some of them were a little bit discreet, but others were so cool, like a toad and the entire Mushroom Kingdom that you were able to draw, and how to make a Super Mario Maker level. That was pretty cool. Overall, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I hope that you consider that like button, maybe subscribing if you're new. We do a bunch of different Nintendo content on the channel. Anyways, see you in the next one.